28mm, it's just not enough anymore. Nobody wants to buy a bike with just 28mm tyre clearance in 2025. But what is enough? This is a Time ADHX 45 and this is a Time ADHX 45. Last year, I reviewed this as a gravel bike 45mm tyre clearance, and I rode it in several big events, including a 300km coast to coast, several multi-day backpacking trips. It was excellent. Now, if I introduce a bike with 45mm tyre clearance only, it's not enough. We did that with the 51 Assassin. You might remember how many comments were like, not interested, 47mm maximum, needs to be at least 2 inches. This year, I'm reviewing this bike as a road bike. Now, Pirelli have launched 40mm wide slick tyres, and apparently it is okay to have mountain bike T-type mechs on a road bike. This is now apparently an all-road bike, but we have been here before because this is the Time ADHX. Now, back in 2023, I reviewed this when it had 38mm of tyre clearance, and in that review, I criticised it and said, Time, this really isn't a gravel bike. It's actually a really good all-road bike, and it would work much better with slick tyres. They listened to that feedback and they brought this out with 35mm tyre clearance, took a little bit of weight out of it and called it an all-road bike. The push for wider and wider tyres is pushing some insane discounts right now. The ADHX in its current form is currently on sale at £2,700, and it's not just Time bikes. If you go to the Wheelbase website, they're a big shop just up the road from us. We've got the Cannondale Super 6s on sale, 25% off. That comes with just 25mm tyres. Merida Reacto on there, 28mm tyres. It's industry-wide. There's a massive sell-off of bikes that are only fit for 28mm tyres. I'm about to take this road bike out for a ride, and while I play you a montage of that ride review, I want you to consider these current price reductions and what compromises you might be willing to make. So the Time Alpe d'Huez maximum 28mm tyre clearance on sale right now for £1,800. Smashing deal if you can get your head around 28mm tyre clearance. The Time ADHX max tyre clearance 35mm, absolutely fantastic bike. There's only a few colours remaining, on sale £2,800. And then the Time ADHX 45, max tyre clearance 45, but oh my God, no UDH. This is the one without the UDH. This is the one with it. What sort of discount would you accept for not having a universal rear derailleur hanger? Check this out. Doesn't it look great? It's so sophisticated. I feel like I should be wearing some nice autumnal tones or something. Anyway, I brought you out here to this little section of rough and ready road because I think this is what this bike's really designed for, is when you want to get a little bit further off the beaten track but not quite as far as gravel, but still getting here is still going to be fun as well. And this is great. You're going to encounter some lovely countryside, but you're also going to encounter gravel and bits of rutted road and grass in the middle and stuff like that. And that's where these 40mm tyres really help, not just to absorb some of the impact, but give you some really reassuring confidence in the handling when you sort of encounter slightly wet, slippery road. You come around a corner, there's a little bit of gravel and some cow pat on the road. That's what it's about. I'm liking it. In terms of the sport of cycling on the road, this sort of opens up a slightly new dimension to me. Just, yeah, interesting. I think I'm about to upset some more people over at Time Bicycles, because 2 years ago when I said that the ADHX wasn't a gravel bike, it's really a road bike, I think I'm going to do it again, because the ADHX 45 makes for a much better road bike than it ever did a gravel bike. That's how quickly this crazy world is moving. Having ridden things like the 51 Assassin, and we've got the Villiers ID2, the thing with the big fat tyres on, look out for that review. You're right, gravel has moved on. As much as you think you might put 2 sets of wheels in here and have it a bit of a hybrid, I think in reality, you would just run it as a bike for this type of back road terrain, because it works brilliantly and it feels lovely to ride. I'm having a completely different road biking experience. I've been you know, to the Alps and, you know, done big sportives where a race bike is fantastic, it's fast. This is still rapid, but there's loads of grip. It's just putting a smile on my face for a different reason. It's not the high adrenaline, it's just really pleasant to ride. And it's still rapid. Like, I've still got this with just, you know, 1 centimetre of spacer, 120 millimetre stem on there. The saddle to bar drop is not as aggressive as I'm used to, but that's okay. In terms of build spec, I think I got this about right. This is meant to be a bit of an experimental build, like to see what it's like. I know, back in the studio, power of video editing and all that, but let's just run through the spec of this insane road bike. First of all, the ADHX 45 in a size large, the first time I've ridden this bike in my size. And we've also gone for the new SRAM Rival group set. This is the 1x version, the 1x13. Probably the best thing that SRAM did in that big release, that they brought this T-type technology down to rival specs, an indestructible rear mech and a 1x setup at the front here. Even though it's got the forged aluminium cranks, they're not so bad in this sort of all-road gravelish configuration. For wheels, we have gone for the Zip 303 SW hookless, not a problem with these massive 40mm tyres. I wanted to run these because I want to educate myself on the tyre pressures associated with these ultra wide slick tyres, and having the live pressure data. And I'm going to take one of those toe peak inflators and mess around with the tyre pressure loads to really understand these tyres a bit more. Talking of which, those massive Pirelli 40mm, they were probably one of the first to bring out a true performance road slick at 40mm. I'm pretty sure that they won't be the last because they have been super popular. And then of course, our cockpit. Gone for the FSA SMR stem, completely integrated the cables, trying to make it look more like a nice performance road bike. And the Data Super Zero bars, these are the 42, which means actually more like a 40 center to center, and the ones with the slight flare. And of course, SRAM Rival levers. Most of the features, you miss out the bonus buttons on those. And then of course, Time Espresso road pedals, because if you've got slick tires and road pedals, it must be a road bike. I actually think all the grey of the Rival and the saddle and the carbon and stuff looks really great against this chocolate brown frame and the gunmetal logos and stuff. Big fat 386 Evo bottom brackets on there, and when you're fitting that up with the wide dub crankset, the chain line works really well, and there's plenty of clearance for your feet because we are using a wide dub axle. Makes perfect sense in this scenario. Little bit of tech info here for you. As we know, when you fit a SRAM UDH to a bike, it makes the rear width of the bike significantly wider from here to here. Now the problem with that is that your cranks can then start to get very, very close to your chain rings, and your heel gets very close to the rear mech. Now SRAM have tried to counter that by introducing the world to SRAM Dub Wide. When you buy a wider crank axle, and then when you buy the bottom bracket, you fit a 3mm spacer on the drive side and a 2mm spacer on the non-drive side, essentially making the bottom bracket a mountain bike shell width, i.e. 73mm, or in this case 92. However, if you are going to be fitting a Shimano rear derailleur, Shimano haven't done a similar thing with their GRX range, so you're probably better off having a traditional hanger arrangement if you're going to be fitting something like this and giving yourself a bit more clearance there for your heels. But if you are going to be fitting SRAM's T-type rear derailleurs, definitely worth looking for. Well, obviously you're going to have a SRAM UDH configuration. So it's not a clear-cut thing, it does depend on where you sit on the SRAM versus Shimano thing too. In terms of the shifting and the gear ratios on this Explore rear mech shifts just as well as the SRAM Red version. Okay, the cassette is definitely considerably heavier and the crankset is definitely considerably heavier, and you lose some functions out of the levers. But I think SRAM Rival in this sort of gravel all-road configuration is actually a pretty good buy. In terms of the gear ratios, we've got a 42 on the front. I might revise that. I think in this configuration, the 4410 would be a better high gear, giving us a 4446. I think that's probably a better configuration. So I'm probably going to swap that 42 out for a 46. And I think this bike is probably going to be about perfect. I mean, I've spent a lot of time on a turbo trainer, so my cadence control is pretty good. I've got a pretty good cadence range. I'm happy to spin anywhere between 80 and 110 RPM. And that's what you probably need if you're going to go for a one-by. You need to be a bit more tolerant of different pedaling cadences rather than just having the perfect gear for your preferred cadence. That is kind of the compromise that you're making. I know that you want to know how heavy it is, so let's take a look. What are we expecting? We are at, with a computer but no bottle cages, 8.8 with a shaky hand. So there we go. What were you expecting? Okay, wide tyres are definitely the future, and this is definitely a road bike. It's not just Time, it's also Cannondale with their new Synapse super wide tyres, the Giant Defy, whole bunch of new bikes hitting the market right now in this sort of so-called endurance category is coming with the ability to fit super wide tyres and a whole lot of other really useful features for kind of this type of riding. In fact, one by group sets are also becoming the norm. Like the SRAM UDH is the correct thing to do in this situation. You know, nice wide bottom bracket, a wide crank axle, you know, the sort of riding you're doing here does not depend on having a nice narrow Q factor. So begs the question, with all that inventory that's still stuck out there as the industry rapidly moves towards our thirst for wider and wider tyres, what compromises would you make? How cheap does a bike need to get for you to go back to running 28mm, 32mm tyres on your road bike? Because there's some deals out there to be had. And with that in mind, if you are interested in those things in the sale or a build like this, give us a shout. All the links are down there in the description. I am really keen to hear your comments. Are you running these 40mm tyres? Do you think it's a complete and utter joke? Is the industry just trying to sell us something again? Do you know what? If you don't believe me, come and ride it. This bike, you can come and hire it, take it out for the day, come and ride around the Lake District. Tell me what you think face to face. With that all said, thanks for watching everyone. Hit that subscribe button, smash that like button. I'll see you on the next one.